Story 1. I need to get this off my chest. I'm 26 and yesterday my life fell apart. My husband and I tried for our second baby for months. We were excited when I got pregnant. Our 2-year-old son would be a big brother, and we'd be a family of 4. The day before yesterday, we saw that flickering heartbeat on the screen. My husband held my hand as we looked at our little bean. Everything seemed fine. Yesterday was my husband's 27th birthday. I planned to make his favorite dinner, steak with mushroom sauce, roasted potatoes, and chocolate cake. I bought a gift and card our son helped decorate. But things changed. I was playing with our son when I felt pressure in my lower abdomen. Then I noticed bleeding. I knew what was happening. I texted my husband about the pain and bleeding. He asked if it might just be normal spotting. I told him this felt different and was getting worse. Later, with more pain and heavier bleeding, I texted that I thought I lost the baby. He asked if I needed him to come home. I said yes, it was urgent because the pain was worse. I felt lightheaded, and our son was alone in his playroom. He said he would come soon. We live 30 minutes from his workplace. I had no one else to call, no friends or family nearby who could get to me faster. So I waited while trying to care for our toddler. I cleaned myself up, went downstairs for painkillers, made our son lunch, and put him down for a nap. An hour passed. My husband still wasn't home. When he arrived, I was on the bathroom floor. He said traffic was bad. Later, I found out he stopped at the store for beers for his birthday. While I bled on our bathroom floor, he bought alcohol. My condition got worse. I lost too much blood, felt dizzy, and vomited. He drove me to the emergency room. The doctors confirmed I miscarried at 8 weeks. By discharge time, it was nearly 8 p.m. I was drained. Driving home, he asked if I was still making his birthday dinner. I had just lost our baby, been through an emergency, and he thought about dinner. I told him I couldn't cook but would order any takeout he wanted. He cursed and said something about this ruining his birthday. He didn't stop for takeout. He drove home, put our son to bed, and left me alone. I went to bed crying while he was somewhere else in the house. This morning, he left before I woke up. No note, no text all day. When he came home, he wouldn't look at me. I tried to talk about what happened and how I felt, but he walked past me. I asked if we could talk because I was struggling. No answer. I asked if he was ignoring me. Nothing. I told him I lost our baby yesterday and he acted like I did something wrong. I called him a disgrace. He went to our bedroom, slammed the door, and locked me out. Later, his mother messaged me. She said I should be patient with her son because he lost something too. She told me I was too harsh. She didn't ask how I was. Not one word about my state. Her son was criticized, and that was all that mattered. I sat outside our bedroom door, bleeding, crying, and feeling alone. The person who should comfort me and share this grief locked me out. Now I wonder if this is what marriage should be. Am I wrong for thinking about divorce? I feel married to a stranger who thinks his birthday matters more than our lost child. The physical pain is nothing compared to realizing when I needed him most, my husband chose beer. He chose his birthday dinner. He chose himself. I'm still bleeding, still crying, still grieving, but I'm thinking clearly. This isn't about hormones or grief making me irrational. This is about seeing who my husband really is. Tomorrow, when he acknowledges me again, we'll have a different conversation than he expects. I lost a baby yesterday, but I gained clarity about my husband. I deserve better than a man who stops for beer while I miscarry alone. Story 2. Dating someone turned me into their personal assistant. 2 years into my relationship, I became the go-between for my boyfriend and his parents. I'm 23 years old with a job in software development. After graduating with my computer science degree, I spent 6 months interviewing before landing this position that pays $110,000 a year. I met my boyfriend at a mutual friend's barbecue. He was sitting alone, so I talked to him. He was funny, kind, and interested in what I had to say. Unlike other guys I'd dated who seemed intimidated by my career, he was supportive about my work. He's 6 years older than me, but sometimes feels younger. He pays his bills, takes care of his cat, and works as a graphic designer making $70,000 a year. We moved in together about a year ago and things have been good between us. The problem isn't my boyfriend. It's his parents. At first, they seemed nice. They invited me to family dinners, asked about my job, and approved of our relationship. But about 6 months ago, things changed. It began with small requests. My phone buzzed one morning while I was getting ready for work. His mother texted me asking if I could make sure he goes to the dentist about his cracked tooth. She mentioned it had been weeks and he hadn't made an appointment yet. I was confused. Why were they texting me instead of their son? I showed him the message. When I asked him about it, he explained that he had mentioned the tooth to them during dinner last week, but said it wasn't a big deal and he would get to it. When I questioned why his mom was texting me about it, he just shrugged and said, "That's how they are, they worry a lot." I texted back saying I would mention it to him, but added that he's good about handling these things himself. A week later, another text came in. This time it was from his father who was concerned about my boyfriend's passport expiring in 3 months. He urged me to make sure my boyfriend updates it soon, mentioning how slow the processing can be. I was baffled. My boyfriend is 29 years old. He can manage his own documents. I replied saying I was sure he was aware of it, but I would remind him anyway. The requests kept coming. His mother texted about the cat food he buys, saying they saw it during their visit and didn't think the brand was good. She wanted me to make sure he switches to something better. His father messaged about tax season approaching, suggesting I might need to sit with my boyfriend and help him file correctly. Each time I would respond saying that my boyfriend can handle things himself, and if not, it would be a learning experience for him. But my deflections weren't working. The messages continued, becoming more frequent and intrusive. One evening I was cooking dinner when my phone rang. It was his mother. After brief pleasantries where she asked how I was and I mentioned I was making dinner, she got to the real purpose of her call. She told me that they had been talking and thought it was time for my boyfriend to look for a new job because his design work doesn't pay enough. I was shocked. When I questioned this, pointing out that he loves his job, she said we were doing fine financially but only because of my salary. She was concerned about what might happen if something went wrong, insisting he needs to contribute more. She asked me to talk to him about it and help update his resume. After hanging up, I was angry. I waited until my boyfriend got home from work. I told him about his mom's call regarding changing careers because he supposedly doesn't make enough money. He sighed and said that sounded like her, explaining that his parents had been on his case about his job for years. When I asked why they were telling me to fix it when he's a grown man, he explained that they've always been like this. He told me that during college they would call his roommate to make sure he was studying, and in his previous relationship, they would text his ex all the time with concerns about him. I asked if that behavior didn't bother him, and he said he'd gotten used to it and just tunes it out. I told him that I hadn't gotten used to it and didn't want to tune it out because this wasn't normal. The next morning, I received a lengthy text from his father with links to job postings and instructions on how I should approach the subject with my boyfriend. That was the last straw. I called his mother. She asked if I had talked to my boyfriend about those job listings. When I said no and that I wasn't going to, she seemed surprised. I explained that while I care about her son, I am not his babysitter. I pointed out that he's 29 years old and can manage his own life. She sounded offended and said they were just trying to help. She suggested that since I live with him, it would be easier for me to make sure he does what needs to be done. I told her it's not my responsibility to make sure he does anything. I asked her to talk to him directly if she has concerns about his dental work, passport, or career. She said she never meant to upset me and they just thought I was organized and responsible. I thanked her but explained that our relationship works because we treat each other as equals. I told her I'm his partner, not his manager. After hanging up, I felt anxious but relieved. When my boyfriend came home, I told him about the conversation. He asked if I had really said all that to his mother. When I confirmed and asked if that upset him, he smiled. He told me it was amazing that someone had stood up to his parents like that, something he had never done himself. I told him that I love him but can't be the middleman anymore. He agreed that I was right and said he had let this go on for too long. The next day, my boyfriend called his parents himself. I only heard his side of the conversation, but he was setting boundaries for the first time. He asked them to stop contacting me about things that were his responsibility. He said he's an adult. He explained that his job makes him happy and we're financially stable. He told them if they have concerns, they should talk to him directly, not through me. When he hung up, he looked tired and excited. He said it wasn't easy but felt good. It's been 2 weeks since those conversations and my phone has been free of parental instructions. I don't think the issue is resolved forever, but it's a start. My boyfriend is beginning to establish his independence in a way he never has before. Refusing to enable the dysfunctional patterns in someone's life can feel uncomfortable. I'm not his babysitter, I'm his partner. And that makes all the difference. Story 3. It's been 3 years since the divorce. My 8-year-old son and I have built a good life together. I work as a travel consultant, which gives me a flexible schedule for single parenthood. My ex and I split custody, but it hasn't been smooth. His behavior got worse after the divorce. Now we only communicate through a parenting app, and we exchange our son at the police station. I have taken my son on several trips before, beach weekends, visits to my parents, and Disney World last year. He enjoys seeing new places, and we've never had problems. I started planning our first overseas vacation to Europe, something I saved for over 2 years. My son is learning about ancient Rome in school and loves gladiators in the Colosseum. I found good flights to Italy, booked rooms with kitchens to save money, and found an English-speaking guide for kid-friendly tours. I told my ex about the travel dates 6 months early, as required. That's when the problem started. He sent messages through the parenting app. He was shocked about our destination and said our son was too young for international travel. I explained that 8 years old was fine for traveling abroad and that I had planned everything. He worried about emergencies or our son getting lost. I told him I would have a local SIM card, hotel information written down, and safety plans like on our other trips. For weeks, he sent daily messages questioning everything. He complained about long flights, unfamiliar food, and language barriers. I explained my preparations each time. Then he demanded to put an AirTag in our son's shoe, saying it wasn't negotiable. I said it wasn't needed since I would have my phone with me. He ignored my opinion and said he needed to track his son when he was across the world with me. I suggested I could register an AirTag to my phone that we both could monitor. He refused and said it had to be on his phone because he was the father. We argued for days. I explained that if there was an emergency, he'd be 10 hours of travel away, with a 7-hour time difference. I asked what he could do from that distance that local authorities couldn't do better. He brought up extreme scenarios. What if I lost both our son and my phone? What if I got hurt? What if there was a terrorist attack? Our son started coming home with worries. He asked if Italy was dangerous because his dad said so. He worried about being kidnapped because his father mentioned it. He was afraid that if he got lost, no one would help him because they didn't speak English. I tried to comfort him without contradicting his father. When I picked up my son at the police station, my ex was waiting there. He told me he had ordered the AirTag and I would have to put it in our son's shoe or he would go to court. I reminded him that our parenting plan lets me travel with our son without his approval. He said he wasn't trying to stop the trip but wanted to protect his son. I questioned how tracking from thousands of miles away would help in an emergency. He called me unreasonable and said any good parent would agree with him. The police officer who was listening stepped in. He told my ex to lower his voice and that this wasn't the place for this talk. My ex complained that I was taking his son to a foreign country and refusing safety measures. The officer looked at me. I explained that I had traveled with my son many times without problems and had all the needed safety plans. I said the real issue was that my ex wanted to track our son through his phone instead of mine, and he had been scaring our child. The officer nodded, then turned to my ex. He said without a court order requiring the tracking device, he couldn't force it. The officer also said that scaring a child about a trip wasn't good co-parenting. My ex's face turned red. He complained about me doing whatever I wanted with his son. The officer told him to take his concerns to court and to finish the exchange without more arguing, or they would have to report it. My ex stared at us before leaving to his car. That night, he sent a message saying I could go on the trip, but if something happened, I should remember he tried to protect our son. I didn't answer. The next morning, I called my lawyer to document everything. My lawyer said that with our parenting plan and his history, the court probably wouldn't side with him. His constant pressure made me doubt myself. I wondered if I was being unreasonable. I had traveled with my son many times without problems. I planned carefully. I know enough Italian, I've researched our trip, and I've taken all reasonable safety steps. But my son was asking worried questions and I was second-guessing myself. I thought about giving in for peace, but worried what that would teach my son and what it would mean for future trips. 2 days later, the school counselor called. She said my son seemed worried lately and had talked about being scared of our trip because something bad might happen. I went to school during lunch to talk with him in the counselor's office. I asked if he was worried about our Italy trip. He said his dad told him I wouldn't be able to find him if he got lost. I told him that wasn't true and reminded him about our meeting spots in crowded places and how he knew my phone number. He then said his dad told him I needed his special tracker or I was a bad mom. The counselor looked surprised but didn't say anything. I told my son that his dad was worried because he cared, but making him scared wasn't helpful. I suggested getting our own tracker on my phone so if we got separated, I could find him right away. He brightened up and asked if he could pick the color. I said yes. The counselor said it sounded like I had thought about safety for the trip. I said I had, mentioning our previous travels. After our talk, my son went back to class much calmer. The counselor asked to speak with me privately. She was concerned about what my son was hearing, saying that being told his mother was bad for not following his father's demands wasn't healthy. That evening, I bought a colorful watch with GPS that my son could wear during our trip. He loved it when I showed him. A week before our departure, I got a court notice. My ex had filed an emergency motion about the AirTag, but his plan failed. The judge reviewed our history, parenting plan, and my trip preparations, including the GPS watch. She denied his motion and added to our parenting plan that neither parent could make negative comments about the other's travel plans or safety measures in front of our child. The day before our flight, the exchange at the police station was tense but quiet. My ex wouldn't look at me. I mentioned we would send postcards. He just said whatever. As we left, my son waved goodbye to his dad, then asked if it was time to go to Italy. I told him almost, and it would be amazing. And it was. Story 4. I got caught up in apartment politics in my 30s. I had other priorities, career, friendships, maybe finding someone to settle down with. Now I'm fighting 2 seniors who act like they own our building. I've lived in this mid-sized apartment building for 5 years. We have a building council that handles maintenance, budgeting, and administration. Things worked fine until this year when 2 elderly residents wanted control. The warning signs were there. The older man from the 4th floor, the president, complained at meetings without offering solutions. His friend, the secretary from the 2nd floor, always backed him up. The annual assembly was like other meetings. 20 residents gathered in the community room with coffee and cookies. I came early to check the agenda and noticed something was off. When enough people arrived, the president took charge, saying he was the meeting chair because he was the oldest resident. No rule said that, but before anyone objected, the secretary said she would take minutes and they should start right away. A resident questioned this, mentioning they usually voted on who runs meetings and worried about conflict of interest since both wanted council positions. The president brushed this off, saying they were streamlining things. When people tried to speak up, he talked over them and moved on. The meeting was bizarre. The president made up new voting rules: 30-second speaking time per item and show of hands instead of our usual anonymous ballots. For council elections, the president named himself, the secretary, and me as nominees. I was popular for organizing events and helping elderly neighbors with tech. I accepted but asked to hear from other candidates. The president said there weren't any and pushed for voting. Another resident stood up wanting to run and suggesting we discuss qualifications. The secretary claimed we were running out of time because the room was booked soon, surprising everyone since meetings were scheduled for 2 hours. The voting was chaotic. The president counted raised hands himself and said all three nominees were elected unanimously, though several people didn't raise their hands. A week later, the minutes claimed the meeting had no objections. It said residents were thoroughly satisfied with the new council members elected by unanimous consent. The minutes included decisions never discussed, like approving the president and secretary as building representatives for legal matters. I emailed our building administrator that the minutes were wrong, mentioning residents objected and the vote wasn't unanimous. He said he understood, but since the minutes were signed by the meeting officials, he needed evidence to reject them. In the following months, the president and secretary acted like owners. They published new rules without asking anyone. They hired the president's nephew's cleaning service without competitive bids. They tried using the emergency fund for repairs nobody thought necessary. Things came to a head when the president knocked on my door with papers for a new security system contract. When I wanted to review it and asked about the administrator's involvement, he said we didn't need the administrator since the council could decide. I told him that wasn't correct and the administrator needed to review contracts before signing. The president got angry. He told me he'd lived there longer than I'd been alive and knew what was best. When I insisted proper procedures be followed and refused to sign, he left saying he and the secretary would handle it. I checked our bylaws afterward. Their actions weren't just improper, but illegal. Our council couldn't make contracts without the administrator. The next day, the president called an emergency meeting with me and about 12 other residents. He announced a former building employee was suing for unpaid wages and warned our assets might be seized, even our apartments. This scared everyone. An elderly woman cried about losing her home. I corrected this, explaining that's not how the law works here, and individual apartments can't be seized for building association debts. I asked why we hadn't heard about this lawsuit before. The secretary said they handled it discreetly to avoid worrying everyone. When I asked for the legal documents, the president refused, saying they were confidential and we should trust them. That was it for me. After the meeting, I talked with concerned residents. I spent a week gathering evidence, falsified minutes, meeting recordings, emails showing overreach, and bylaws they violated. I consulted a property management lawyer, then filed a lawsuit challenging the legitimacy of the assembly minutes and their decisions. I also made a detailed report with evidence for every resident, sliding copies under all apartment doors. The next day, neighbors messaged me. Most supported me, shocked by what they learned. Others thought I went too far. One resident asked why I was attacking elderly people who might not understand the rules. I replied that age doesn't excuse deliberate misinformation. Another suggested resolving this without legal action because of their age. I explained I tried for months, talking privately, suggesting compromise, offering help with procedures, but they weren't interested. The president and secretary left notes under doors accusing me of trying to take over and disrespecting elders. Their credibility was damaged. Residents started attending meetings they'd skipped, asking questions, demanding transparency. 3 weeks after my lawsuit, the court froze all council activities pending review. The administrator called for a proper assembly meeting. At that meeting, the president and secretary watched as residents voted to remove them and elect new representatives. I stayed on the council but declined being president, suggesting rotation to prevent power concentration. The secretary left after the vote, saying we would regret this decision since they were the only ones who cared enough to work. A longtime resident replied they didn't care about work but about power, and there's a difference. The lawsuit continues, but building operations are back to normal. The new council found the president planned to give a major renovation contract to his son-in-law's company at double the market rate. Some think I went too far and should respect my elders more. But respect doesn't mean accepting manipulation or letting others harm the community. Sometimes doing what's right means being seen as the bad guy. It wasn't about beating two difficult seniors. It was about protecting our home and ensuring fair, transparent decisions. That's worth any neighborhood drama. Story 5. I'm the youngest of 3 daughters, now 28 and engaged to my partner of 5 years. We're planning a small ceremony that shows who we are, relaxed and not flashy. My 2 older sisters had big weddings. Mom helped them both, which they wanted. My oldest sister had a church ceremony with 300 guests at a fancy hotel. My other sister used a country club with ice sculptures and a band. They picked their dresses with mom, shopping trips with champagne like on TV. That's not me. I'm more independent. My sisters call me the black sheep because I moved away for college and didn't rush back like they did. I built my career in graphic design and found my partner without mom's matchmaking. When we got engaged 3 months ago, I wanted to plan our wedding our way. We chose an outdoor ceremony at a state park we love, with a reception at a local brewery. Simple food, music, and friends. I was excited to find my dress. I'm not the princess type. I wanted something simple, tea-length, maybe with color, no train or veil. I saved ideas on my phone and planned to visit boutiques with my friend. Last weekend, I went to my parents' house for clothes I store in my old bedroom. My parents kept our rooms the same. My sisters still use theirs for extra storage too. I was looking through my closet when I found a massive white garment bag. Inside was a wedding dress, the most stereotypical princess gown ever. Huge puffy skirt, pearl beading everywhere, a cathedral train, and glitter in the fabric. I was confused, thinking one of my sisters left it there. Then Mom walked in. Mom asked if I found the dress and wanted to know what I thought. She called it gorgeous. I asked why this dress was in my closet. She told me it was my wedding dress, like this was normal. When I said I hadn't gone shopping yet, she said she saved me the trouble. She mentioned it was designer and she got a deal on the floor sample. I stared at this dress that was everything I didn't want. I felt like Mom didn't know me at all. I told her I appreciated her help, but this wasn't my style. I was looking forward to picking my own dress. She seemed shocked and asked what I meant. She said it was beautiful and every bride wants a dress like this. I told her I didn't and wanted something simpler. She thought that was ridiculous and said I needed to look like a proper bride. Things got worse. I tried explaining how important choosing my own dress was, but she wouldn't listen. She kept saying I should try it on and I'd change my mind. I refused. The next day, my sisters texted me. My oldest sister said Mom was upset and I should try the dress to make her happy. I said it was my wedding dress and I should pick it. My middle sister said Mom spent a lot of money and I was ungrateful. I pointed out I never asked her to buy it and she never talked to me about it. My oldest sister said that's just how Mom is with weddings. I asked why they got to pick their dresses when Mom took them shopping. My middle sister said it was because I'm so independent. And Mom thought this was her only way to be involved in my wedding. That hurt because it had some truth. I kept wedding plans between me and my partner, not because I wanted to exclude Mom, but because she always tried to change my ideas into something more traditional and extravagant. Mom called me crying. She said she wanted to do something nice and spent money on the dress. I told her she should have asked me first since this was personal. She said my sisters liked when she helped with their weddings and accused me of pushing her away. I said I just wanted to choose my own dress. She called me difficult and said she'd tell everyone how ungrateful I was. She called my aunts, grandma, and family friends. People I barely talked to messaged me saying I should respect my mother and be grateful. Then Mom showed up at my apartment with the dress. She brought it for me to try on right then, along with her old veil. I told her I didn't want to try it on. She brought up raising me and putting me through college, asking how I couldn't try a dress to make her happy. I said this wasn't about the dress but about her not respecting my choices. She called me childish and said a real adult would appreciate what their mother does. I took a deep breath and was honest. I told her I tried including her in wedding planning that worked for both of us. I asked her to help with flowers, but she argued because I didn't want huge centerpieces. I wanted her involved, but not if I had to give up everything I wanted for my wedding. She asked if I thought she had bad taste. I said we have different tastes, and some decisions were mine to make. Choosing my dress was one of them. She gave up and said she'd return the dress or offer it to my cousin. She added that someone would appreciate what she does. Before she left, I suggested a compromise. I asked if she would come with me to look for my actual dress, not to choose but to be there. She hesitated, then asked if I really wanted her there. I said yes, but I would pick the dress. She agreed but added I shouldn't complain if I couldn't find anything as nice as her pick. Not a perfect solution, but a start. Later that week, we went shopping with my friend as backup. Mom kept showing me puffy dresses, but eventually saw what I wanted. When I tried on the dress that felt right, a simple sheath with lace detail, Mom admitted it suited me. She said it wasn't what she would have picked, but it was very me. That was close enough to approval. And it was enough. Story 6. My phone rang on Tuesday evening with an international number I barely recognized. I hesitated before answering. Calls from overseas usually meant something was wrong. I heard my brother's voice through the line. We hadn't spoken in almost 8 months. My brother and I grew up close, but life took us in different directions. After college, I got a corporate job in Asia, while he joined the army and stayed in our home country. The distance grew between us over time. We talked less often, mostly on holidays or when something big happened. Through our parents, I knew about his nasty divorce. He and his ex-wife met in the military in the same unit. They were similar people, stubborn, always thinking they were right, and never backing down. Good soldiers, bad partners when things went bad. I asked how he was doing. He said he wasn't doing well and needed my help. I asked what was going on. He told me his divorce was getting worse and his ex-wife was trying to take the kids completely. The custody battle had gone on for almost 2 years. They both went through many lawyers and legal fees piled up. The courts wanted to give his ex-wife primary custody, with him seeing the kids on weekends and some holidays. He told me this wasn't acceptable. He needed to make one final push. That's where I came in. I asked what he meant. He said he found new lawyers with a strategy, but it would cost $100,000 for this final push. I pointed out that $100,000 was a lot of money. He said it was about his kids and he couldn't lose them. I listened to his plan. The new lawyers would flood the court with motions, hire experts, investigate his ex-wife's background, and wage legal warfare. He used military words like strategy, tactics, offensive, and last stand. He saw this as a battle to win, not a problem to solve. What bothered me most was what he said about his lawyer's advice. He told me the lawyers said it probably wouldn't work. They advised against it, saying it was unwinnable and a waste of money. I asked if his own lawyers were really telling him not to do this. He said yes, but they didn't understand. He thought sometimes you have to make a last stand even when everyone says you'll lose. It was about principle to him. I asked if he thought about what this might do to the kids by dragging things out longer. He said the children needed to see their father fight for them. That's what mattered. He then talked about money. His savings were gone from previous legal battles. His credit was maxed out. He couldn't borrow more. I asked if he was asking me for $100,000. He said yes, and he wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I asked if this would be a loan. He said he couldn't pay it back, not soon and maybe never. I went quiet for a moment. This money was years of careful saving. I'd been saving for my future, to buy property or start my business. It wasn't just extra cash. I told him I needed time to think. He said there wasn't time because the lawyers needed to file by the end of the week. I said I couldn't decide right away. He sighed and said I could call him tomorrow. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about my brother and his kids. I loved my niece and nephew, even though I'd only met them a few times. But something felt wrong about his request. Not just the amount, but why he wanted it and how desperate he seemed. I called our parents the next morning. I asked if they knew about this custody battle plan. My dad said they did, and my brother had asked them too. They gave what they could, but nowhere near what he wanted. My mom said she worried about the kids suffering. My dad said my brother's ex-wife wasn't perfect, but she was a good mother. The current plan wasn't bad. Weekend visits, split holidays. Many divorced parents have this set up. Their view backed up my doubts. This wasn't about what was best for the children. It was about my brother's pride and not wanting to lose. When I called him back, I had decided. I told him I couldn't give him the money. He asked why not and said we were talking about his kids. I said that's exactly why I refused. His own lawyers didn't think it would work. It would just hurt everyone emotionally and financially. He said I was taking his ex-wife's side. I said I wasn't taking sides. I just didn't think spending $100,000 on something his lawyers said wouldn't work was smart. He said this was his last chance. I said his real last chance was accepting the current plan and being a good weekend dad. He could show his kids he could handle this maturely. His voice got cold. He said I had no idea what it was like sitting in my nice apartment overseas while he fought for his family. I said that wasn't fair. I worked hard for my money and cared about him and the kids. But this wasn't life or death. This was him not accepting reality. He asked what good I was as a brother if I wouldn't help. Family should be there for each other, he said. I said I was there for him, trying to stop a huge mistake. The money would be gone with nothing but more pain to show for it. He said I was dead to him and not to call for Christmas. The line went dead. For weeks, I wondered if I made the right choice. Had I failed him? Should family loyalty come first? I tried calling several times, but he never answered. 3 months later, he emailed me. It was short but not angry. He wrote that the custody arrangement was set. Weekend visits and split holidays as expected. He was starting therapy next week. The kids seemed okay with things. It was time to move on. No mention of our fight. But I understood. The battle ended because he finally accepted reality, not because of a last stand. I replied with support and asked when I could video call the kids. He suggested the next weekend. During our call, my niece and nephew looked happier than I'd seen in years. The fight between their parents had been hard on them. Now, with a clear plan, they were getting better. My brother and I didn't talk about the money again. Some wounds need time. But watching him with his children, focused on them instead of fighting their mother, I knew I made the right choice. Sometimes the hardest battles are against our own pride. A year later, I visited them. After the kids went to bed, my brother pulled me aside. He said I was right. The money would have been wasted and hurt the kids more. I said I was glad he was doing better now. He thanked me for not giving what he wanted, but what he needed. A reality check. It wasn't easy, but sometimes being family means saying no when it matters. Story 7. I liked Disney princesses when I was little. Snow White was my favorite. Something about her drew me in the first time I watched the movie. Her kindness, her connection with animals, and that dress. I begged my mom for Snow White things. Dolls, costumes, bed sheets, everything. My bedroom was full of Snow White stuff. My mom helped me find Snow White merch and took me to the Disney store. We bonded over my princess interest. Things changed when I turned 12. My brother, 4 years older than me, got embarrassed by what he called my baby obsession. I didn't get why he had a problem with it. I wasn't making him play princesses with me. But his opinion seemed more important to my mom than my happiness. Halloween when I was 12 was the breaking point. Like every year since I was 5, I wanted to be Snow White. I saved my allowance for months to buy a new costume since I outgrew my old one. My mom said she would help style my hair like Snow White. I was excited. 3 days before Halloween, my mom came home with a package. She told me she got my Halloween costume. I thought it was the Snow White dress I wanted. Instead, she took out a hot dog costume. Not a cute hot dog, a giant, bulky, ridiculous hot dog. I asked where my Snow White costume was. She told me she thought I was too old for princesses and this hot dog costume would be funnier. She said everyone at school would love it. My heart broke. It wasn't just about the costume. My mom decided my passion was childish. My brother stood in the corner smirking. He said the guys would stop teasing him about having a baby sister who thinks she's a princess. I tried to tell them how much being Snow White meant to me, but they laughed like I was overreacting. I went trick-or-treating in that hot dog costume, feeling awful. When other kids asked why I wasn't Snow White like usual, I had no answer. After Halloween, my mom got rid of my Snow White things. First, a few items disappeared. Then one day, I came home from school to find my whole collection packed in boxes to donate to kids who would appreciate them more. I was hurt but felt powerless against my mom and brother. They decided I needed to grow up, and anything I said just made them think I was childish. So I acted like I didn't care and hid my love for Snow White. Years later, I'm 24 and living on my own in the same city as my family. My mom and I have an okay relationship, though there's distance between us since those teenage years. I never forgave her for the hot dog incident and getting rid of my collection, but I never brought it up. That changed when she invited me to dinner. My brother was there with his girlfriend, and they started talking about embarrassing childhood stories. My brother told the hot dog costume story, making it sound like they finally got me to grow up. My brother told his girlfriend I cried over the princess costume. He said she should have seen my face when mom brought out the hot dog. His girlfriend laughed and my mom smiled awkwardly. Something in me snapped. All those years of hurt came back. I told them I remembered being bullied about something I loved until my mom humiliated me instead of defending me. I remembered finding my treasured things packed up without asking me and feeling like the people who should love me were ashamed of me. The room went quiet. My brother's girlfriend looked uncomfortable. My brother said it was just a joke and told me not to be dramatic. I asked if he knew how it felt to have something you love mocked and taken away. My mom said they were trying to help me fit in better because kids can be cruel. I asked if making me ashamed of what I loved was better than teaching me to be proud of who I am. I asked how that was helping. I grabbed my coat and left. For the first time, I stood up for my 12-year-old self. The next few weeks were tense. My mom called, but our talks were awkward. My brother sent defensive texts. I wondered if I ruined our family by speaking up. Then last weekend, something unexpected happened. My mom picked me up from work with a surprise. At her house, she showed me fancy skincare products and hairstyling tools in the bathroom. She told me to get fancy because something was waiting when I finished. When I was done, she was in the living room dressed as the evil queen from Snow White with the black cowl and everything. She called me Your Highness and gave me a large box. Inside was the most beautiful Snow White dress I ever saw. Not a costume. A gorgeous dress with amazing details and quality fabric. I asked what it was for. She said the new Snow White movie was premiering that day at 7 p.m., and she thought I might want to attend in style. I changed into the dress and felt like that little girl again. But now I appreciated this healing moment. The movie was magical. Little girls asked for pictures with me, thinking I was the real Snow White. My mom watched me interact with each child. After the movie, which was better than critics said, we ate ice cream in our costumes. My mom told me she thought about what I said. She said I was right and she should have protected my joy instead of trying to change it. She said the hot dog costume wasn't meant to be cruel. She thought I'd like trying something different. She said she should have listened when I was upset. I asked about getting rid of my collection. She said it was wrong. She explained my brother was getting teased, and instead of fixing the real problem, the teasing, she tried to change me. She thought she was helping me avoid bullying, but she became the bully. She said sorry. Her apology felt real, and sitting there in my Snow White dress with melting ice cream that cost $5, I knew I could forgive her. I told her I forgave her and thanked her for the day. She told me being a princess isn't just about dresses and tiaras. It's about knowing your worth and standing up for yourself, which I did when I called them out. She said she was proud of the princess I became. On the way home, she mentioned the local children's hospital has a program where people dress as characters to visit sick kids. She already picked up an application for me. Since then, my relationship with my mom has improved. My brother gave a grudging apology too. I applied to the hospital program and have my first visit next month. Standing up for yourself can lead to happy endings. Story 8. I got my first tattoo at 18. A small butterfly on my shoulder that represented freedom after a difficult childhood. My parents were strict and controlling. They monitored my clothes and friends. When I moved out for college, that butterfly was my way of claiming my identity. Over the next 3 years, I added more artwork. Each tattoo tells a story. Roses climbing up my right arm from my grandmother, who raised me during my parents' divorce. Geometric patterns on my left forearm representing chaos and order in my life. and a small constellation on my wrist, marking the night I decided to put myself first. People stare at my tattoos. They judge. Some make rude comments. My mother cried when she saw my full sleeve, saying I'd ruined my body. It took time to embrace this part of myself and stop hiding under long sleeves in summer. When I met my boyfriend 6 months ago at a coffee shop and he complimented my tattoos, I felt like I'd found someone who accepted me. He would trace the lines of ink on my skin, asking about the meanings behind each design. What happened last week caught me off guard. We were watching a movie when he told me his family wanted to meet me. His parents were having a big dinner next weekend and wanted to meet me. I was nervous but excited. I told him I'd like to meet them. He smiled, then his expression changed. He suggested I wear something with sleeves so we wouldn't start drama. I asked what he meant. He explained his grandparents were old school and might not react well to my tattoos. He didn't want the night to be awkward. For 6 months, he'd never suggested my tattoos were something to hide. I asked if he wanted me to cover part of myself to make his family comfortable. He said it wasn't about hiding, but respect. And it was just for one dinner. His tone was casual, like he was asking me to wear a specific color, not hide a part of my identity. I told him respect goes both ways and I shouldn't pretend to be someone I'm not for his grandparents. I asked what would happen after this dinner, if I'd keep hiding every time I saw them. He told me I was overreacting and it wasn't a big deal. Just one night, he said. My temper rose. After years of learning to accept myself, dealing with stares and comments, my parents' disappointment, it all rushed back. I told him it was a big deal to me. I'd spent years being ashamed because of what people thought, and I wasn't going back. I would come to dinner but wouldn't cover my tattoos. His face hardened. He told me if I was going to be difficult, maybe I shouldn't come at all. I felt shocked. I asked if he'd rather I not meet his family than have them see who I really am. He said I was making this into something it wasn't and he was trying to avoid drama. I told him he was trying to hide who I really was from them. I asked what his plan was. Keep me hidden until they knew me, then surprise them with tattoos later? When he didn't answer, I knew. I told him I thought he accepted me, but I was wrong. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. He called after me, saying it was just clothes. I turned back and pointed out if it was just clothes, it shouldn't matter what I wore. I went to my best friend's place. She hugged me and asked what happened. I explained everything. She listened and made tea. She asked if he wanted me to hide my tattoos, and when I refused, he uninvited me. I said yes. She told me that was wrong and he was dating me, not some version his grandparents might prefer. I wondered if I should just wear long sleeves for one night. She asked if it would really be just one night. What about vacations, holidays, and swimming in summer? She had a point. This wouldn't end with one dinner. The next day, my boyfriend texted asking if I'd calmed down and was ready to be reasonable. That made my decision clear. I asked him to meet at our park. When he arrived, he tried to hug me. I stepped back. I told him I'd been thinking about our argument. He asked if I was coming to dinner. I said no, and we shouldn't see each other anymore. His eyes widened. He said I was breaking up with him over clothes. I told him I was breaking up because he asked me to hide who I was, called me difficult for standing up for myself, and had made small comments about my tattoos before, asking if I'd remove them or joking about how I'd look when older. He started to speak, but I continued. I told him I'd worked too hard to accept myself to be with someone who wanted to hide me. He didn't respect me and I deserved better. He said his grandparents would judge me and he was trying to protect me. I told him he was trying to protect himself from their judgment for dating someone with tattoos. As I walked away, he called that I'd regret this and wished me luck finding someone who accepted my lifestyle. I turned and told him I already accepted myself, and that's what mattered. 3 months later, I met someone at an art gallery who admired my tattoos and was an artist. On our first date, he asked to photograph my tattoos for inspiration. On our second, he wanted to introduce me to his parents, who ran a tattoo parlor together. Story 9. I'm a 30-year-old woman who got married to my husband, also 30. We've been together for 4 years. This past year was full of wedding planning, dress fittings, venue hunting, and all the stress that comes with preparing for a wedding. Some background. My husband grew up with this woman who I'll call my sister-in-law. Their moms have been best friends since they were babies. My husband and sister-in-law dated in high school for about a year but broke up and stayed friends. She married my husband's older brother 5 years ago, making her family before I came along. When my husband and I got engaged, I was happy. We planned our day together. Since my sister-in-law was family, she was included in almost all our wedding events. Parties, dress shopping, cake tastings, venue visits, she was there. At first, things seemed fine. I liked her and we got along. But as the wedding got closer, I noticed a change in her attitude toward me. Small comments here, strange looks there. Every day she seemed more irritated by me. I tried to ignore it. Wedding planning is stressful for everyone, right? Maybe she was having problems in her life. I didn't want to create drama. Then came our rehearsal dinner the night before our wedding. We had a private room at our favorite restaurant. Everyone was dressed up, the mood was happy, and I was starting to relax after months of planning. That's when she started making jokes. My sister-in-law told the entire table that she could have been my husband's wife. She laughed afterward. I smiled and took a sip of wine. A few minutes later, she said she would have looked stunning next to him at the altar. Everyone laughed awkwardly. My mother-in-law smiled at her while my future brother-in-law kept eating his salad, avoiding eye contact. My husband squeezed my hand under the table. He was uncomfortable too, but neither of us wanted to cause problems at our rehearsal dinner. But she kept going. Throughout the appetizers and main course, she kept making these little jokes, each one worse than the last. She talked about going to prom with my husband, saying how handsome he looked in his tux and comparing it to our wedding tomorrow. Then she mentioned how they used to talk about getting married as teenagers. She even said someone's first girlfriend is always special, looking at my husband while saying it. I stayed quiet through most of dinner, but when dessert was served, she went too far. She asked my husband why they broke up, saying she couldn't remember the reason. She looked at him, batting her eyelashes with champagne in her hand. The table went quiet. Everyone looked between her, my husband, and me. That was it. I'd had enough. I told her to keep her jealousy to herself, pointing out that this was our rehearsal dinner for our wedding. Her face changed from playful to shocked. She tried to defend herself, saying she was just joking. I told her I'd had to listen to her remarks all night at my wedding rehearsal, and I was tired of it. I reminded her that she was married to my husband's brother and should show respect. She didn't mention their past relationship for the rest of the night. She barely spoke at all. My brother-in-law gave me dirty looks, and my mother-in-law seemed shocked that I spoke up. The rest of the evening was tense, but at least I didn't hear any more about how she could have been my husband's wife. The wedding the next day went well. My sister-in-law behaved, though she was cold toward me. I was too happy to care about her attitude on my special day. My husband and I went on a 2-week honeymoon to the Caribbean. No family drama, no wedding stress, just us enjoying being newlyweds. When we returned home 2 days ago, my phone rang as soon as we walked in. It was my mother-in-law. She said we needed to talk and asked to come over. An hour later, she was in our living room with a stern face. My mother-in-law brought up what happened at the rehearsal dinner. When I asked what she meant, she told me that how I spoke to her friend's daughter was rude. According to her, my sister-in-law was just remembering old times and having fun, and I embarrassed her in front of everyone. I explained that my sister-in-law had been making inappropriate comments about her past with my husband all night. At our wedding rehearsal, my mother-in-law said my sister-in-law and my husband have known each other their whole lives and have memories together. She said my sister-in-law didn't mean anything by her comments. I pointed out that she said she could have been his wife and asked why they broke up, questioning how that was appropriate. My mother-in-law said I was too sensitive and my sister-in-law was just joking. I told her it didn't feel like a joke to me or my husband. Then my mother-in-law said I owed my sister-in-law an apology because she was hurt by what I said. My sister-in-law spent the entire dinner making me uncomfortable with comments about her past with my husband, and somehow I needed to apologize? After my mother-in-law left, I talked to my husband about it. He told me I was right to stand up for myself in our relationship. He was uncomfortable with her comments too, but didn't want to cause a scene. Now my mother-in-law and brother-in-law are upset with me. They've been sending texts asking when I'm going to apologize to my sister-in-law. I haven't answered. Part of me wonders if I went too far, but another part knows I had the right to stop those inappropriate jokes. My husband and I are starting our life together, and I don't want to begin our marriage with this problem. Yesterday, I decided to fix the situation. I called my sister-in-law directly. I told her I wanted to talk about what happened at the dinner. She asked if I was calling to apologize. I said no, I was calling to clear the air. Her comments made both me and my husband uncomfortable. It was our wedding weekend, and she kept bringing up her past relationship with him. I asked how she would feel if someone did that at her wedding. There was a long pause. She finally said she didn't mean anything by her comments. I explained that intent doesn't erase impact, and I want us to move forward as family, but that means respecting boundaries and our marriage. After another pause, she admitted she could see how her comments might have seemed inappropriate. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. Later that evening, my brother-in-law called my husband. He said everyone had overreacted and we should all move on. My mother-in-law texted me thanking me for working things out and saying family should stick together. No apology from her either, but at least they stopped asking me to apologize. My husband says he's proud of me for standing up for our marriage. He's right, starting our marriage by setting boundaries is important, even if it created some tension. I hope that's the end of the could have been wife comments for good. Story 10. I need to get this off my chest and figure out if I'm wrong here. I'm 26 and work in retail. I don't make much money, but I budget for small luxuries after long work days. One luxury is my streaming services. I pay for 3 different ones because each has shows I enjoy. My friend and I know each other since college. I'm careful with money. She spends impulsively, then complains about being broke. We stayed friends through the years, having coffee or movie nights at my place. Things changed 3 months ago. We were at my apartment looking through one of my streaming services for something to watch. My friend told me she was thinking about canceling her subscriptions because bills were piling up and she needed to save money. I said that made sense and she should do what's best for her finances. She said she would miss her shows and suggested using my account since I already pay for them. She laughed, so I smiled and didn't think much about it. We found a show and watched a few episodes. A week later, she texted asking for my login information for Streamflix because she canceled hers. I was surprised since I thought she was joking that night. I told her I don't share my login information. She asked why not, saying it wouldn't cost me anything extra. I said I prefer keeping my accounts private and mentioned that recommendations get messed up when multiple people use the same account. She said that was a lame excuse and nobody cares about recommendations. I didn't answer right away, hoping she'd drop it. The next day, she brought it up again during lunch. She mentioned the streaming accounts, saying she needed something to watch because she was bored at home. I suggested keeping one service and canceling the others, like most people do when saving money. She said she already canceled all of them and asked me to let her use mine, saying I wouldn't notice she was using them. I told her I wasn't comfortable with it and some services limit how many devices can stream at once, and I didn't want to get locked out of my own account. She called me stingy, saying it was just streaming and not like she was asking for money. I pointed out that she kind of was, since these services cost money that I budget for. I added that she chose to cancel hers to save money, but that didn't mean I had to give her free access to mine. She changed the subject but looked annoyed. Over the next few weeks, she tried several more times to get my login information, getting more frustrated each time I refused. Then came the group dinner that blew things up. We were with mutual friends and talk turned to streaming shows. My friend told everyone not to ask me about streaming, saying sharing was a foreign concept to me. When everyone looked confused, she explained she canceled her subscriptions to save money, and I wouldn't share my login info as if it would cost me anything to let her watch too. One friend mentioned sharing accounts with their sister. Another said their family uses their parents' account. I felt my face getting hot as everyone looked at me. I tried explaining it wasn't about money but principle. I pay for these services myself and had heard about accounts getting locked when too many people use them from different locations. My friend said I was making excuses and being selfish over something that cost me nothing. I told her she chose to cancel her accounts, which didn't make me responsible for her entertainment. Then I mentioned if saving money was so important, maybe she shouldn't have bought designer shoes last week that she showed me. The table went silent. I hadn't meant to bring up her spending, but I was tired of feeling guilty. She got upset and said I was monitoring her purchases. I said I wasn't monitoring anything but didn't like being called selfish for not giving free access to something I pay for. She left the restaurant. The dinner was awkward after that, with friends trying to change the subject. Some texted later saying they thought I was right but didn't want to take sides. The next day, she sent a long text. She still thought I was being ridiculous about streaming but shouldn't have brought it up in front of everyone. She also said I needed to rethink what friendship means, saying friends help each other and questioning why I wouldn't share something that costs me nothing. I wrote back that while I value our friendship, that doesn't mean sharing everything I pay for. I offered to help with budgeting if she was struggling financially, but wouldn't give my login info and wanted her to respect that boundary. She didn't respond for a week. When she did, she told me she resubscribed to one service and found ways to budget better. She said sorry for making a big deal, though I could tell she still thought I was being unreasonable. We started hanging out again, but things aren't the same. I wonder sometimes if I was too rigid. But I remind myself that friendship isn't about what you can get from each other. It's about respecting boundaries and decisions. If our friendship couldn't survive me saying no to something I wasn't comfortable with, maybe it wasn't as strong as I thought.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more stories like this. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. And if you have any thoughts or suggestions, drop them in the comments below. We love hearing from you. See you in the next video.